Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. It's V the Grill Economist coming to you live with my main man, Matthew Ehret, the one and only, one of the greatest minds when it comes to understanding the great game. You can find Matthew Ehret over at CanadianPatriot.org, CanadianPatriot.org, as well as the RisingTideFoundation.net. The links would be in the description box. You can also catch Matthew over at his Substack. Make sure you subscribe to him and make sure it is integral. It's got to be part of your library. It's got to be part sitting there on your coffee table so when people come over, people can see it. That is the books that Matthew Ehret has written. They're absolutely invaluable. I have them. I cherish them. In fact, they're right here on my desk. Pulling it on right now. I mean, you can't see it, but The Clash of Two Americas, Volume 1.
You could have put any books on your desk just
I
now.
could have.
How do we know? How do we know?
Oh my God, you're gonna make me do this? You're gonna make me do this? All right, look. Here we go.
Well, the Andrei Martinov, you have your video on. You know, I'm trying to trick you into finally coming on the video at the same time as me. That's the one. All right, you got it.
There it is.
V, authentic V, right there.
That's right. That's the real deal. Volume 1 and Volume 2. It is amazing. Make sure you guys get it because it's so integral into understanding where we were, where we are, and where we're going. People have a false misconception of what America is. People have a false idea of what the founders were really fighting for, what men like FDR, Henry Wallace were really fighting for. People have no clue. They think we're this crazy, convoluted neoliberal nonsense that we turned out to be, but we are not like that. We're so much more. And if you want to get the absolute crux, the meat and potatoes of where we are, what the American system is all about, and the hope that it is, what is 1776? Why it did not occur in a vacuum, you need to get Matthew's books. It's The Unfinished Symphony, The Clash of Two Americas, Volume 1 and Volume 2, which is the open and closed systems collide. That's one of my favorite ones, by the way. Get it. It is not mind-blowing, but mind blasting. That's right. That's some Indian friends.
That's a big one. That's
mind blasting.
Heavy word. No, I hope that everyone feels the same way. You know, again, and we'll get into some current events and some bigger ideas, but just as a quick note, since this is how we're starting, and I'm happy. I don't mind the plug. As a Canadian, just to really be clear, I was raised to be anti-American. Like that, right. Most of the world, and a lot of Americans don't realize to what extent most of the rest of the world thinks of them as being an imperialistic mess. Even like there's something obviously really good in American history, but it took me a really long time to do the research and realize what that was. And it was only when I started looking into 9/11 and recognizing that, okay, my reality is not what I've been taught, you know, and a few years of research goes by, you know, and my ego, my mind took a lot of big hits, that I started realizing, well, the US, which seems to be this overbearing empire, hasn't really benefited from anything that it has done to the world destructively, which has resulted in a complete decay of its own people, its own culture, its own productive ability to stand on its own 2 feet. The nation is less secure than it was 10 years ago, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Every single decision has resulted in greater danger, less sovereign ability for the nation to direct its own destiny, less sovereignty of the people to be citizens. So it's like, who benefited? And it was only at that point that I realized, no, the U.S. has actually been infiltrated and has been set up to collapse, to fall, to break. And at that point, your sort of new vistas to appreciate reality open up, because you realize this is not a communist conspiracy. This goes way back before that. This is actually something which involves an attempt to do again what the British Empire failed to do during the Civil War of the 1860s, with all their Wall Street plus, you know, slave owning fifth columnists who never left. They were never extracted. They were never at moments when you had good presidents who usually they die while they're in power. At those moments, you tend to get a battle where the power structure of this deep state or proto deep state is reduced and the U.S. returns back to its better heritage, its better constitutional traditions. But these are never really long lasting. And usually you get a subversion, as I said, from a variety of assassinations, other things. And this other thing calling itself America tends to take over the helm. But what is it? What made the U.S. so good, such that this empire has been trying for, I would say, 250 years to undo the American Revolution and stick the genie back in the bottle, which is really what this whole fight today around unipolar versus multipolar systems that are vying for control over the new operating system that is going to replace the collapsing world order that is currently now collapsing. It's all about that same fight of 1776. And when you appreciate it that way, it gives you an edge, and it gives you a sense of hope that you wouldn't otherwise have, reasonable hope, because you realize that this is that the empire doesn't have the type of power that they try to project onto their victims. They want to get us to think that they're this all-powerful, shadowy force that's always been plotting for hundreds of years our destruction. And it's like, nah, yeah, they've been around for a long time. There's been this continuity of an evil sort of tradition that has the same yearnings today as it did back in the ancient Roman Empire days of global crystallized stasis and domination by a master class of elites and their nest of cults for both the elites and the masses as a whole. But they don't have that much power because they're periodically upset, thwarted. There's something else that is more that always creatively undermines their desires, and that's again where you really appreciate the brilliance of minds like George Washington, especially Ben Franklin. You understand why people like Alexander Hamilton have been so slandered as Rothschild agents. This is not a new slander that just was cooked up, in the last few decades. This goes back to even before his body was like, it was still warm and dead when this was cooked up by, ironically, the same people who created Wall Street. Aaron Burr, the entire Burr machine, who killed Hamilton's son in a duel. Same location in New Jersey using the same guns that Alexander Hamilton was killed by when he did the duel with Burr. It was the same guns in the same location that killed Philip Hamilton in 1802, 2 years earlier, with an asset of Burr's machine, who got this talented kid, which drove Hamilton a little bit nuts. Such that, the guy accepted, a smart guy, but he accepted a duel, probably a rigged game, and died, when he was in his 40s, before he could accomplish a lot of things that he could have otherwise set out to do. And this is the Aaron Burr who created the Bank of Manhattan, which JP Morgan on their website credit as being the seed of the entire JP Morgan Wall Street apparatus in 1798, when the guy took over one of the banks that Hamilton had originally created to fund infrastructure, water projects, provide loans to small and medium enterprises, the Bank of New York. Burr basically took over control, infiltrated, and transformed this thing into this nasty speculative branch of the city of London in America. And that's been growing like a cancerous parasite, installing agents. The real agents are not the people who were told. Like Hamilton is not an agent. Lincoln, I'm going to be in a debate, in about a week, to defend Abraham Lincoln, because the person I'm debating is really convinced that Lincoln is a Rothschild stooge of evil. And it's like, this is a person who died. He was assassinated by an operation very clearly and provably run out of the city of London. He stopped the Union from disintegrating into little balkanized, groups all allied to England, with a South Confederacy and a North Confederacy. That would have happened. Would that have been a better world? Because that's what the oligarchy is trying to do today. They want to break up the United States. They want to get the United States ideally to do it themselves, which unfortunately the American people and leadership have acquiesced to a little bit too much by allowing this corrupt folly to normalize itself. And now we're at the last stages where, I don't know if a civil war necessarily is going to break out, because, the population is pretty, I don't know if the population today is even capable of carrying out a civil war. I don't know.
I don't think so as well. And we're going to be transitioning right off of YouTube. So goodbye to all of our YouTube audience. If you're on YouTube, Get us over at Twitch and DLive and RogueNews.com, where this broadcast runs in its entirety. So get on over there. The links are in the description box. Signing off to YouTube. We're going hardcore now, man. That's
Toodles.
it.